Good afternoon, Jennifer. It is now the 10th episode of Making Reproductive Longevity a Reality, and I'm so glad that we're having this episode today because we are going to have a fantastic discussion. I'm Zhong Hui here for the 10th time. I'm going to tell you that it is my passion in reproductive aging research to try to change the narrative of female reproductive aging and try to see how it affects and the care of women's health. Jennifer, what I'm going to do today?
We're gonna mix it up a little bit today. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm Jennifer Garrison. I'm a faculty member at the Buck Institute and the faculty director for the Global Consortium for Reproductive Longevity and Equality. So we're dreaming big. We want to figure out what leads to reproductive decline in females and develop interventions to slow or reverse it in order to give women freedom in their reproductive choices. That's a lot.
It is a big dream that we're going to do it and achieve it.
It is. So we're going to have a panel discussion with some thought leaders in the field to really wrap up a lot of the ideas and the science that we've talked about, but also to think about what we can do going forward to really make this a reality. So, we have three panelists joining us. Nicole Shanahan, who's the president of the Bia-Echo Foundation, Professor Yap Seng, who is the head of the NUS School of Medicine and also A-STAR in Singapore, and Dr Joon Yun, who is the principal partner in Palo Alto Investors. And he's also someone who I think really has had a huge effect on building this field. So this all started a few years ago with Nicole Shanahan's vision and her foundation, Bia-Echo Support. We established a center at the Buck Institute to study female reproductive aging. And it was the first facility that really focused solely on reproductive longevity and equality as it relates to aging. And since the Buck Institute is a place where we focus entirely on aging, it seemed like the perfect place to start it. And as time went on, it became clear that, there just wasn't a lot of research going on exactly in this field, bringing together geroscientists and reproductive biologists. And so, to grow the field, we really thought it had to be bigger. It needed to be global. So to broaden and strengthen our reach, we started this consortium. And the idea behind the consortium is really to build an intellectual network of scientists and academia and biotech, thought leaders, ambassadors, and essentially to make a collaborative dialogue between people who wouldn't normally talk to each other. And since we're pioneering this, we can do it the way that we want to, right?
So, yes, indeed, we have to do it.
Exactly. And so that's where you come in, Zhang Wei and Yap Seng. So the center at the Buck was the first, but not the only center. So there's a new center starting in Singapore with exactly the same goals, but with a completely different cast of characters. And this goes to what the consortium is meant to do, which is to get basic scientists to talk to clinicians, to get people in industry and biotech to talk to the basic scientists who are making the discoveries so that we can push things forward faster. And the reason that we want to do this, obviously, is that every aspect of a woman's life is influenced by the fact that she's going to go through this reproductive decline. So we want to alter the societal balance for women towards equality. And I ultimately understand what leads to menopause and enable scientists to discover things that would slow or reverse it. So we want to talk about building this ecosystem. So for the consortium, that really, it involves three things. So one is funding, right? We cannot do scientific research. We can't do clinical research without funding. So that is a major piece of it. We've also pioneered the first core facility that focuses on ovarian biology. So that helps to lower the barrier to entry for scientists from outside the field. And then we're building this collaborative network to promote the dialogue about women and aging and health. So in terms of the granting, we've given away our first round of grants last August. We were able to fund 23 different scientists all over the world to work on really important basic science to study this question. And so this webinar was designed to highlight some of the research we funded. Right. So Zhang Wei and I have been talking to you all the way through here, and every episode had one or two grantees presenting their work, talking about why this is so important. And now here we are at the end. I can hardly believe
it. Not the end, it's just the beginning.
Just the beginning, yeah.
It's just the beginning.
So I'm going to stop talking. It's my pleasure to introduce all of our panelists, but I wanted to start with Nicole. So Nicole, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about why you think, it's important to invest your time and resources in this area. We want to hear from you.
Well, thank you so much to Jennifer and Jongwei and everyone at NUS and the Buck for making this webinar series and this entire field of science a reality. This field didn't exist, if you can believe it, 2.5 years ago. And I'm smiling ear to ear, listening to you and Jongwei, and seeing Professor Chong on the line and Joon here, because it is really a manifestation of what was just a pipe dream that I had one day as I listened to longevity researchers talking about changing the narrative on longevity science and longevity in general. And when I was involved as a lawyer, a patent lawyer, analyzing the space of longevity science, the field of reproductive longevity had not been established. It hadn't actually even really been coined. And I learned this kind of through a combination of one ear listening to longevity scientists talking about changing the narrative, and the other ear listening to what I thought was my clock ticking, or how it's often been described as, when you hit 30, you've got to really get serious because your clock is ticking. So I had both things going on in my mind at the same time as a patent lawyer. And not at all really thinking I would have invested entrepreneurial spirit and capital in the space. But after a half year of talking to everyone in the field of longevity work and in women's health, realizing that this was a field ripe for creation, and the time truly is now. Well, ideally it would have been 10 years ago, but now is better than never. So what Bia-Echo is about is finding areas of work that have not really been defined in a way that allows for an injection of capital and creativity, science, and entrepreneurial spirit to come into the same room. And reproductive longevity is a field that, it's I don't have to convince anyone to care about this because so many people already care about it. Right, Jennifer? I mean, that was one thing you and I bonded on immediately as women that have been told we can do anything if we study, focus hard, and commit ourselves. We can do anything in our respective fields of work. And it seemed odd being at the forefront of a profession, but when it comes to our personal experiences, being categorized on a graph that is literally with a single point of inflection with a cliff.
That's right, a cliff. We've shown that graph a few times and made the point that this is on average true, but at the level of the individual, that this is not true at all.
It's
that there's
not
so much
true at
stochasticity.
all.
Yeah,
Not true.
It's not true at all. That there's,
Not true for every woman. Every woman is different. That's what I tell every woman that I see.
Yes, every woman is different, and that is why, and every woman cares, and at every level, every man cares. So. It's not a matter of convincing people to get on board with this. I think it's a matter of really coming together as a community and making sure that as we form these alliances, as we start to define the areas of research and define the methods of funding, that we do it with that in mind, that everybody cares.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Nicole. And I think I would like to invite Professor Chong now to share, especially from NUS School of Medicine point of view, as well on why do you think, Prof, that we should invest time and resources in this area that Nicole has just shared.
Thanks, Chong Wei. So the first thing I'd like to do is to thank Nicole at the Bia-Echo Foundation for their generous gift to us last year, at the end of last year, to launch the Bia-Echo Asia Center for Reproductive Longevity and Equality. Thank you very much. This is the first time I've managed to say that to you face to face.
Yes,
Thank you
Nicole.
so much.
And thanks, June, for helping this get along as well. So basically, it's important because I must admit that as an obstetrician gynecologist, right, when I was training, I was never that interested in reproductive biology. I was more interested in the obstetric side of things, taking care of pregnant women, delivering the babies, and ensuring the future is bright. But over the years, one issue has emerged in Asia, and that is that women are choosing to have start their families later and later, and having smaller and smaller families. So that makes the issue of fertility become much more important. So last year in Taiwan and South Korea, the number of deaths exceeded the number of births. So the populations in these two countries, like many parts of Asia, are beginning to decline. And Singapore is facing the same issue as well. So I think extending the ability to conceive later in life is going to be a very important biological and clinical enterprise for the scientists and the clinicians. But more importantly, I think, and that's a good thing to aim for, but I think more importantly is to keep people informed. I mean, if we can come up with better diagnostics or prognostics to let women know where they are in terms of their reproductive life, how much ovarian reserve they have, then they can make choices based on their own biology. And I think, and for the more general audience, I would say that people should know that if they decide to delay starting a family, there are things that they have to consider, and they have to make those choices without expecting that they can do it anytime they want. So that's one thing I think that's very important. And finally, I think for the clinical services and the scientists, we have to really push the envelope, make fertility even in late 40s something that is not going to be a miracle. It's going to be something that's a bit more achievable. So this is some of the reasons why the NUS Yong Loo Lin School of Medicine is focusing now on this area, which I think is going to be of increasing importance, especially in the Asian megacities where the populations are aging very fast.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you look at the number of women who are in menopause right now or entering menopause, the prediction is that by 2025, I think something like 1 billion women worldwide will be in menopause, which is certain to be, more than 10% of the population. And so, beyond fertility, there's also this, this really dramatic negative impact on women's health. So there's so much, I guess we don't have to convince this audience that this is important. But I wanted to bring June into the conversation too, because honestly, it was June, I think, who nucleated all of this, if I'm not mistaken. So June, would you introduce yourself and give us some context for why you thought it was important to invest time and resources in this area?
Thank you. And I want to add to everybody's welcome, all of you out there. And it's an honor to be part of this amazing panel. We're at a historic moment. This is a historic opportunity. And we are part of the pioneering group, all of you here, with the great stewardship from Nicole. I think I'm optimistic that that will make a big difference. And my interest in this really stems from a conversation with Nicole. I'm so glad this conversation is global and it's intercontinental. And it was actually in the Intercontinental Hotel in San Francisco where Nicole and I first had this conversation. And she's very generous in a number of ways, including the credit she gives to the longevity scientists. But it's also equally true that they were inspired by her. It was actually a talk she gave at one of the longevity conferences where the scientists were in the audience. We listened to you. One of the things that is going to be very important in the longevity field at large is equality. And as we make advances in aging science and longevity science and health and longevity science, we care deeply about how quickly that brings equity and justice to populations, especially to disadvantaged populations. And foremost in the consideration is the inequality of reproductive longevity. It was her insight that as the health and longevity field makes advances, if we don't actually also address reproductive longevity, then in fact the gender inequality is due to worsen. I think that was a brilliant insight. And I remember when she made it on stage and we had coffee conversation at the Intercontinental. And that was really the beginning of thinking through what and how and why and who. And incredible things have come about since then. Nicole made an incredible announcement at the National Academy of Medicine, where there's a Healthy Longevity Grand Challenge going on. It's a 40-nation global competition nurturing both science and innovation in longevity. And now I'm delighted to say, also again through Bia-Echo support, that reproductive longevity and equity is also a new topic within the Grand Challenge, which is now the Global Grand Challenge. And it speaks to the importance of community, of leadership, and also funding. Nicole is the seed investor in the field, Bia-Echo is. And my hope is that this is just the beginning. I would love to see more ideas, more scientists, more source of funding, including private sources as well as public sources. One of the things that would really help the field is more federal support for women's research in general, and then reproductive research more specifically. Right now, women's health research in general is underfunded within the federal government, including the NIH. And reproductive research comes out of NICHD, predominantly comes from other sources too. But when you look at the absolute numbers, it is a really small number relative to the issues that women face and the opportunities that we unlock the value by providing women both with, and I think you said it best, Jennifer, both the freedom and the choice. 1960s, I think, was the first revolution in humans' reproduction through giving them choice. And now we're 50 years later, I think we're facing another challenge. And it is my hope that the science and the community and the public will rise to meet that challenge. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly in the U.S., the funding that goes towards women's health from public sources it's small, and then there's a piece of that that's infinitesimally smaller that goes towards women's reproductive longevity. And so this actually, thank you, June, that leads us into something that we really wanted to chat with everyone about, and that is, what do you think are the biggest challenges in the field? So funding, obviously, and you know, thinking about funding this area of science, there's, you know, there are so many pieces to it, right? So when we were talking about how to give away the money for the first round of granting through the GCRLE, you know, we cast the widest net possible because we didn't know what we were going to get. And we wanted to draw in as many scientists with as many creative ideas as we could. And, you know, spanning everything from thinking about finding a non-invasive diagnostic, as a few of you alluded to predict oocyte quality and reproductive decline, to actually doing preclinical testing for candidate drugs, and literally everything in between. But so, and you know, you should jump in and tell me what you all think are the most important and maybe formidable challenges that we face in building this out and really achieving something tangible for women quickly.
Yeah, I think at this point I would like to interject, because I think Prof. Chong will definitely know in Singapore the funding mechanism for reproductive research is really, very, very difficult to obtain any real funding. So I think Prof. Chong is actually quite pivotal in trying to drive this forward. And I'm not sure, you know, in Singapore itself, can we ever, you know, move this even forwards with our efforts now with a new center at NUS itself? Prof. Chong, do you have any inputs on that?
Thanks, Joey. I was hoping that Nicole will go first, but no problem. I mean, I think in Singapore, the funding for research is very much like that in America or NIH, where much of the research funding goes towards diseases, so cancer, dementia, and things like that, rather than health. So if we're talking about reproductive health or even healthy longevity, for example, the funding is much more uncertain because it's areas where you're dealing with what people think are immutable biologies. Aging. How do you change aging? How do you change reproductive life cycle? So people think it's impossible, so they rather not deal with it. Disease, on the other hand, is a specific abnormality which they can then target. So I think that's one of the things that needs to change in the minds of funders, that targeting biology, especially where health is concerned, is something that they should really put a lot more effort in. I mean, in Singapore, I would say the most pressing health problem is the fact that the population is aging so fast, right? So today we have 5 young people supporting every person over the age of 65. In just 10 years' time, it will change to only 2 young persons for every elderly. So, it's changing very fast. And if we don't get a grip on the situation, we're going to have a problem where, more than a quarter of the population will require support and healthcare. And if we don't do it now, there's a problem. And for reproductive health, the same issue. If we don't deal with it now, and women are, without the proper information, are deciding to start families later and later, and then finding that they can't, then it's going to accentuate the problem of fast aging populations. So, I would say the Bia-Echo Foundation is the largest funder of reproductive health research in Singapore at the moment. So I think that's kudos to the foundation, and I hope they can lead others to fund this area as well. So back to you.
Thank you, Prof. I think that's wonderful, and I want to hear from the ladies especially, because when I see the ladies that I have in the clinics and they are going through this, really painful process of trying to have their own family, and then I tell them that I'm sorry, there's so much I know. I can't have any new solutions for it at this point in time. Research is so limited. So actually, Nicole, what you're trying to drive is something so close to me, not because I'm a man who cares for the women in front of me and their husbands as well. Can you tell me, what do you think are the biggest challenges you face? Because I need to change the narrative. I can't keep saying, sorry, this is it. Sorry, this is it. Yes, Nicole, please.
Yes. Well, before I get into that, I do want to say working with NUS has been such a pleasure because of how the government generally looks at innovation and matching. So, while specifically the grant space hasn't been defined, I mean, honestly, you guys have defined room for innovation in a way that I think is unprecedented, really. And so, my grant to NUS has actually been matched with some government funds as well. So I just am so grateful for that, because it made it made working with your team there really a no-brainer, and I'm just very grateful. And so, but to the point of challenges, and recognizing that medical professionals just aren't getting enough new research in front of them to work with. That was very, very clear in my personal experience, and very, very clear anecdotally across the experience of pretty much all of my female peers. So I think the biggest challenge is misinformation due to the lack of new information. And, truly, when there is stagnation in a field, there's so much room for generalization and really misframing and oversimplification. So my thoughts currently are that we really need to redefine our set of diagnostics. And I think that's really the lowest hanging fruit available right now, is how do we rethink the field and change the narrative in terms of diagnostics. We really have quite rudimentary tools right now, having women take their temperature, which is fine, but there's got to be a little bit more we can do. We have blood tests that measure certain hormones, but these hormones fluctuate almost daily, and we're only taking it at one point in the cycle, and usually only once every other month if we're really trying to expedite conception. So I think the opportunity to face these challenges is really right in front of us as we look at the grant applications that are coming forward, and how do we turn these grant categories into a new set of diagnostic tools and understanding, so that research can be put in front of medical professionals like you, Jongwei, and you can say, well, I just read this paper, right?
Indeed.
And in this paper, they found that, this kind of therapeutic or this kind of diet increased success rates by 70%, right? So yeah, I think we can overcome many of the biggest hurdles of misinformation even in these first few years.
Yeah, incredible. And Jongwei, I'll be texting you all the papers.
That'd be excellent. I need that.
Yeah, this idea of
Jennifer, your mic, you're a bit soft.
Oh, that's hello.
Yes.
Better?
Yes, absolutely.
I was just saying that this lack of information is really critical. And, the funding is the first part, the second and the third and the 10,000th part is really to, facilitate getting those basic scientific discoveries to the clinic, right? And that is really where having these two centers is so important.
Yeah.
Joon, did you want to tell us about what you think are the challenges in the field?
I definitely agree with what's been said, and I will add to that. I think increased public engagement in supporting the science and scientists would really help the field. Even something as straightforward as expanding federal funding. Congress will respond to public pressure. So the more demand there is among all of you, the more our federal leaders will step up. We need sustainable funding. It's incredible what Bia-Echo Foundation has done to seed the field through NUS and through BUG and all the great scientists there, and also the scientists being secondarily funded. But ultimately, for this field to continue to grow, it'll have to be a public-private partnership. And I would love to see NIH and HSS and similar organizations around the world really provide a pool of money for scientists who are the heroes of this field to be able to do their work. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us. But public engagement in this field, as large as the issue is globally, I think the same set of challenges have kept this field fallow for decades until Nicole and Bia-Echo stepped in. I think persists to this day. I've been surprised at the fact that this emergent field, I feel like this should be world news. It feels like this should be on the cover of Time magazine. And I hope it'll get there, and I think it'll get there. So to the extent that all of you out there can have conversations, either on the dinner table or in professional conversations, personal conversations, to really help really nurture the field through discussion and opportunities, I think is something that will really create the wave. And then one other thing I'll say, another challenge, it feels like we need very specific federal leadership. And by that, I mean, women's health and reproductive health, I mean, it is being funded, but there's nothing like it becoming somebody's primary responsibility. And, we do have an Office of Research for Women's Health within the NIH, but it'd be amazing if one day we can envision something like a National Institute of Women's Health, like as a 28th institute within the NIH, or even have it be a center where the principal responsibility is to support women's health in general, and as part of that, women's reproductive longevity. So I do look forward to emerging leadership in this area in the public sector.
That would be amazing. I think galvanizing and organizing non-scientist and non-clinician leaders in this area who are going to, disseminate the information, highlight our efforts, and bring attention to the issue is really critical. So how do we do that? We're having this webinar. What are the other ways we can do that? Any ideas?
I wanted to interject also because I'm so often told that IVF is this great technology and and I always get questioned why I'm not more supportive of IVF. And my response, and I'd love to hear how you guys are thinking about this in relation to fundamental research, which is what we're doing, versus IVF, which was not developed actually under the umbrella of reproductive longevity or even general women's health. IVF was really developed for women who were soon to undergo chemotherapy. And it's amazing to me how few women I know who understand that history of IVF and understand the history of IVF as a intervention. Is that something you guys also have been noticing as you build out the field?
Well, I would like to say something, Nicole, because actually I practice IVF, and really the field has come to a point where I think we need to do more about it. It is not a silver bullet. It is not a solution to many things. And actually, the first IVF baby, Louise Brown, was born because unfortunately her mother had this condition where the fallopian tubes are blocked. And the fallopian tube is actually the site where natural conception happens, where life begins, where the sperm and egg meet. And that's the same narrative I tell patients, and couples who need help. They become patients because they got blocked tubes and whatnot. I think IVF helped these women best when we find out what is wrong. But if you talk about aging and aging the ovaries, it's not something that IVF can really surmount. Because naturally, women at 40 years old, there's still 10% of women who still can conceive and naturally have a healthy baby. But by and large, there's still 10% of all women at that age. And that's why, I think this field needs to push for, we need more fundamental research to understand how life really begins, what actually affects, the ovaries to make it so sensitive to changes to the environment, the innate biology. There's still so much that needs to be learned about. And I think you're right. We should have more information, the right information, so that women can have choices. And that is not just IVF. I definitely don't think that is the end of it all. I'm not sure what the other panelists feel. Yeah.
It's been I think 43 years since the first IVF baby was delivered, and IVF has improved quite a lot, but not as much as you would imagine should have occurred in over 40 years. So I think it's still a very sort of trial and error method of doing clinical work, where you give a certain amount of hormones to the patient and then see the response and then titrate and go. So it's actually quite primitive still. I feel a lot the way IVF is still carried out. And on top of that, I feel it's actually very difficult for women to undergo IVF. It's about a whole month or so of coming into the clinic and getting injections and then scans, and it's difficult. And coupled with the fact that a lot of employers don't make allowances for these women to take the time off to do this if the women are working. So it's really very stressful on the women. And at the end of the day, the success rate isn't too high, especially when you go past the age of 35. So many women, families are disappointed. So it's not a happy situation. The trouble is that most women don't know that. They think that IVF is always there. If I get pregnant later, if I want to get pregnant later, I can always go for IVF. And they don't realize, well, actually the success rate is very low. If you think about it, with all the IVF going around the world, pregnancies or live births due to IVF, it takes up only about 2 or 3% of all live births. So, with the massive industry out there, it only contributes a small proportion of babies. So I think much more has to be done to refine the technique, and much more has to be done to inform women that the technique is still, still pretty rudimentary. And so you shouldn't count on it. You should really count on your own body's biology to help you achieve your family, and maybe to do it a little bit earlier. So those are the things. But of course, there are some things we can do, like freezing of the ovarian tissue and reimplanting, like we do for young women going for chemotherapy. That's one possibility. There are so those are some things we can maybe consider and making more routine rather than making an exception right now.
I think that one of the reasons that there hasn't been much change in how IVF is done in 40 years is that, we really don't know what makes a good egg. Like, we fundamentally don't know the most basic things about how infertility comes about, why it comes about, when those first, really important cues happen, whether it's something during development or during adolescence or during young adulthood, and until we know what is the causal factor driving ovarian aging, what is that cue or timer, that constellation of things or a single thing that happens, until we figure that out, everything we're doing is just a Band-Aid. I have so many friends who freeze their eggs and think that that is going to somehow ensure their ability to have children later in life. And I have to tell them, 15 oocytes for a 15% chance of a live birth. That's, and that's, as you mentioned, Prof. Chong, it's such a difficult thing to go through on a woman's body. But I was wondering, Zhang Wei, whether you ever have women come into your clinic who try to freeze eggs and then can't do it.
Yeah, I think before I say that, I think Joon Yun wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw him raise his hand.
I can't see him.
All of those comments, and I wanted to throw in maybe a social innovation opportunity related to IVF, which is a reimbursement model that allows the technology we do have to be more accessible across populations. I think the access to the technologies, both in egg freezing and IVF, have not been, we haven't solved the problem of distribution and equity. And some nations have policy and reimbursement in place that allows more equitable access. So that's something that the United States, at least, I think we could do a better job of. So there's a social innovation opportunity there as well for IVF.
Right.
I thought I'd quickly jump in here to say that, because IVF is really expensive if you take it from a normal commercial route. And Singapore government has, in the past, been quite reluctant to fund it. Singapore, we have a way where we can subsidize the medical care for patients. But because of the fast aging issues, the Singapore government has now relaxed a lot of the rules around providing subsidies for women who want to go for IVF. And then they're also increasing the age at which they will also fund it. So in the past, above 40, they wouldn't fund because of the low success rate. But now they're opening up. So I think some governments are trying very hard, but unfortunately, IVF, as I said, no matter what we do, it's going to be a small proportion of the pregnancies that really occur. So we should definitely put in our best effort here, but I think efforts in other areas are also required.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Zhang Wei.
Yeah, because Jennifer, I really want to answer your question because as what Joon Yun has so rightfully mentioned, I think the legislation and all, when it comes to social egg freezing, the legislation and the society in large should come together and see if this is really an option for women. But to say the least, even egg freezing itself is not a very nice procedure because it's invasive. The poor woman has to undergo injections as well, and they undergo a minor procedure to actually collect eggs. And unfortunately, even for that procedure itself, even though we can give the woman her options, age becomes the thing because the quality of the eggs are determined by the age still. So we haven't solved the main issue about age affecting oocyte quality. We might have the technology and the technique to freeze these eggs, until when they are ready, we thaw from the freezer and use them. And once the right, Prince Charming comes along. But I don't think it solved the real problem with age as well. So if unfortunately a 40-year-old woman comes in and demands egg freezing and she only got 2 eggs, and these are not the best quality eggs, in the end, the endeavor is futile as well. Lots of heartache, lots of cost involved, So I think we need to do more about this. And just now, I saw a comment from one of our very ardent webinar series follower, Professor Mary Zielinski. She actually did mention that the American Society of Reproductive Medicine and the European Society of Reproductive Medicine and Embryology has actually, said that can age-related infertility be prevented? Because if that can be prevented, then we can actually affect general women's health. And I completely agree with her. And I'm not sure how the panelists feel about this.
Well, I think we're all interested in more enduring solutions. So really working on the native biology. But that said, again, there's low-hanging fruit on preventative side. I think preventing infertility is always better than post-hoc. And things that we can do more near-term around diet and environmental health and endocrine disruption. There's lots of opportunities there too. I mean, the entire field is underfunded. So there's some near-term gains and opportunities through things that we know we can do. And then over the long haul, obviously, if we can get a biologic solution to the preventative side, that'll be much better than trying to remediate afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, and I tried to imagine where we would be as a field if all of the money that has been invested in IVF and all of the money that's been invested into marketing IVF and all of the government money that has been invested in subsidizing IVF, if just 10% of that went into reproductive longevity research and fundamental research, where we would be today. I imagine we would have all kinds of new diagnostic tests. We'd probably have artificial intelligence models. We'd have greater data sets. The number of, quote, miracle babies I've heard about since starting this field is probably in the hundreds now. I think almost 200, I estimate, messages from women who have reached out telling me that they were told they were infertile and then had a miracle baby. And then they would say to me, well, clearly I'm not the only one. And I would respond, you are indeed not the only one. And the reason we think about these babies as miracle babies is because we don't have the answers. And because we've also have told so many women that they are infertile when in fact they are not. Maybe in those moments of those tests and in those moments of those efforts, they are infertile. But there are also moments that follow those previous moments where they are incredibly fertile. So I dream of government, and I dream of institutions rethinking the financing of IVF within the context of how little funding has gone into fundamental research.
Yeah, that's an amazing number. I can't even imagine what that would be. I mean, gosh. The miracle babies, they're not miracles. They're just, complicated biology. We talked a lot about how complex the ovary is, the fact that not only is it composed of all these different tissues talking to each other, but it's also going through this dynamic remodeling every single month. And so, the difference between how fertile a woman is at the beginning of her cycle and the end is completely different. And that also translates through to her age. It's crazy.
Yeah, and not to say not every cycle is fertile. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
even in young women, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many times I disappoint the women, I think the time is right. And then they try it. It's like, well, I'm sorry, you're not pregnant still. So they get disappointed, with repeated failures and no encouragement, they get disappointed. And it's hard to get them, that this is a natural endeavor that it's human rights, isn't it? I mean, to have a family you want, to have the child you love. I think that's something that is basic human rights as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When I talk to people about this, oftentimes they're incredulous. They're that we know so little, that there has been so little research done. But until a few years ago, the NIH funded research that was only in males. There was no mandate to actually include females in preclinical studies. So we have half a century of preclinical work that was conducted mostly in males. So just the basic female biology is still a mystery. But there is this really intriguing connection, right, between the age at which a woman goes through menopause and her overall health and longevity. And, long before menopause, when women are young, we know that there's this connection between reproductive function and their overall health. So thinking about, how to increase the sort of creativity and the cohesiveness between, clinicians and basic scientists and how they're thinking about things. Do you all have any inspiring ideas for how to basically get people to talk to each other who aren't going to normally talk to each other?
I'm going to echo your comment, Jennifer, because the crosstalk between the longevity field in general and reproductive longevity specifically, I think they will mutually benefit each other, because we do know those things are connected. But even getting right down to the core biology level, where you see juvenescence, where you see the ability to return to a younger state, you actually see it in from eggs to a zygote. You see transformation all over again. You can see aging mitochondria, and all of a sudden, it returns to a brand new being. So the things that we learn through the reproductive longevity field might actually hold some of the important clues to addressing overall human longevity as well. So I think your comment about crosstalk is very important.
Since you're talking about longevity, I wanted to have a shout out to Eric Verdun, I think the director of Buck Institute. I think he's online. So hi, Eric, great to be working with you. So now going back to Joon's comment, first of all, I think it's great that Joon is here. I mean, he represents the link between science and the marketplace. It's people like him who actually make science lucrative for scientists and accessible for the public. So I think that's a very important part of the equation to bring industry in as well. Now, going back to longevity and reproductive longevity, and Nicole's point that if more funding, just a percentage of what funders normally put into diseases or treatments were to be shifted to discovery, that is maybe a little bit longer term, right? Biology is complex, and science, good science needs time, investment, effort, and money. If you were to put more of that into longevity and reproductive longevity, I mean, I suspect that we would be having different conversations today. So I think that's something that really needs to be done. And I think Joon made another great suggestion. We should get Nicole onto the cover of Time magazine so that the topic of reproductive longevity and equality gets universally discussed. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, this idea that every disease of the modern world is, the major risk factor for all of them is aging, right? And that's also true for reproductive span, that age is the number one thing that determines what's going to happen with all of these things.
And personally, I would rather see you guys on the cover of Time. Because quite frankly, none of you guys are the real frontline heroes of this.
We'll do our best, Nicole.
Yeah, we try.
Yeah. So Jennifer, I think now we're going to ask the most important question, something that really hope the panelists could really tell the field and tell everybody that's attending this webinar is that where should we be in 5 or 10 years time? What are the possible achievable short-term and long-term goals? And importantly, what are the benchmarks that will delineate progress in this field? Nicole, do you want to start first?
Yeah, actually, I was just chatting with a journalist about this yesterday. I think step one was really defining the field under the umbrella of longevity. And really a lot of that inspiration came from Joon, because longevity is a catch-all that allows for collaboration that would otherwise not happen if you funded in just specific disease buckets. Or if you just funded in women's health, as we found. So step one has been achieved, thanks to you all, in that we have set up the institutions, we have defined the space, we are starting to go into phase 2, which is analyzing what scientists are coming up with and really igniting creativity. Step 3 is iterating on that first phase, casting still a wide net, but then adding greater definition to the taxonomy of the science. And so this next round of granting out of the global consortium will look a little different than the first round. And then my hope is that within 4 to 5 years, we really are starting to define new diagnostic tools and collaborating with industry. So like I'm wearing something called an Oura ring right now, and it tracks my temperature, it tracks my steps, it tracks my sleep. So I'm collecting all of this data, and all of that data is going to some wonderful, hopefully highly secure database. And I think in aggregate, we are getting so much data right now, personalized data, that I think we'll start being able to link up with new research coming out in the field. And then finally, therapeutics, obviously. And I think that within 5 years, we will have a new set of therapeutics in the clinical setting. And I think, that's why having the Buck doing one area of organization in the space and NUS doing another area of organization is going to be just such a great partnership, because there are, different strengths, I think, working in the clinical setting. NUS is a hospital. You have this incredible relationship with A*STAR and other research institutions. And then the Buck is in the Bay Area, not quite Silicon Valley, but within the, the greater community of Northern California. And so we have industry here, and we have industry that is so heavy on collaboration across different data platforms, and of course, commercialization. So I think this is just a wonderful marriage.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. We're so excited to work together. Jun, did you want to talk about where you see things in 5 or 10 years?
One of the metrics of success, to your question, Zhongwei,
Yes.
thinking out 10 years, if in 10 years that we had a dramatic increase in the number of young scientists going into the field because of your leadership, the breakthrough innovations, the advancement in science, the broadening of the funding sources, so that some of the best and brightest minds of the future, as they enter the scientific domain, would consider entering this field. That this would be a really exciting field for them to enter, and especially if they're a female scientist. I think that would be one measure of success that I would love to add to what Nicole said.
Yeah, and part of what we did with the first round of granting was to include a large number of postdoctoral fellowships. So these are people who are finished with their PhDs, but they're not yet ready to go and start their own labs. So there's this intermediate period of advanced training that they go through. And this is the time when they actually decide what they will work on in the future. So we thought it was really important to seed the field essentially with these young scientists. And anyone who wants to go back and listen to some of the other webinars, we had several of those postdocs give talks, and they were fantastic. Professor Chong, what do you see in 5 or 10 years?
Thanks, Jennifer. So in 5 years, okay, so 5 years, the first thing I'd like to see is a lot more awareness around female reproductive longevity. especially among young women. So in Singapore, this year we've convened a Child and Maternal Health and Wellbeing Task Force, which is a multi-ministry task force. And the idea is for Singapore to come up with a strategy by January 2022 for the next 5 years to enhance human potential in Singapore, right? Because that's the only thing Singapore has, human capacity. We have no other natural resources. So that's very important. And particular attention must be paid to women. I mean, at the opening, the video, it says they hold up half the sky. And actually, they carry the future with them, right? Because if women are not healthy, then the next generation is not going to be doing well. So it's very important that women fully understand what's ahead of them. They know themselves. We need to empower them to make the right choices about their fertility and their, how they want to structure their families. So that's the awareness which I think should come into place within 5 years. Number two, probably is the funders. I think funders have to come around to the point that health is worth focusing on as a research area, right? It's not just diseases. So so I know the Buck Institute, like us, we are struggling with funding for health, for aging or healthy longevity, as we want to put it. I think the message to them just really needs to be that, look, we're not trying to keep people alive forever. We're not trying to discover the fountain of youth. All we're trying to do is to extend your healthy lifespan by 2 or 3 years, and that will make all the difference to health for the population. So, and that's achievable. And for reproductive longevity, the same thing, right? So, we're not just dealing with old people and trying to keep them healthy, but we're trying to keep women extend their choices and that period of time that they can conceive, so that it. And I think the word equality actually is an important point. When Nicole first mentioned it, I didn't quite understand what reproductive equality meant. But of course, we understand. I mean, in the sense that men can continue to have children all the way to the 80s, and women, on the other hand, somehow in the prime of their life, suddenly they are told, well, your time is up. So that's really doesn't seem fair. And we should try and maybe correct this little flaw in biology. And I guess in 10 years, then that's when I hope that we have finally managed to master the biology enough so that we can have real therapeutics, or maybe not therapeutics, but maybe prophylactics that work and allow women to meaningfully increase their reproductive lifespan without having to go to the demeaning therapeutics of IVF. So there you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we can get that done in 5 or 10 years. No problem. As long as we're working together, right? That's the whole point, is to accelerate things. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, unfortunately. I'm really enjoying this discussion. We can keep the discussion going on gcearly.org if you all want to participate in the network communications platform that we put together. But I wanted to extend thank you to everyone, to Nicole for your incredible vision and your generosity, and also for sharing, your ideas and thoughts with us. Also to Joon Yun for joining us, and really for putting together this group of people at the beginning, talking to each other and thinking about, how we could actually make a difference in the world. And Professor Chong for, having the vision too, to move beyond just IVF and fertility, and for your leadership, and for helping us put together this webinar. NUS has done a spectacular job, I have to say, both technically and they've done you can't see all the people behind the scenes here who are helping us, but they have done a spectacular job helping us put this webinar together. So thank you, everyone. And we put together a short reel, if you want to watch it, of highlights from the series. And if you want to find the series online, you can watch it on YouTube. For the men in the audience, the The fact that women's reproductive span is correlated with their lifespan is also important for you because brothers of women who go through menopause later also tend to live longer. So there's clearly a genetic component.
How does the brain make sure that the animal eats right? So what you're seeing here is a really rare but beautiful phenomenon where butterflies will go and drink the tears of turtles. And the reason these male butterflies do that is because they're taking the salt from the butterfly tears and will then give this salt to the female when they mate so that they can make sure that the female will have a high egg production, obviously, of their offspring.
They are like in all shapes and colors they come. There are more than 15,000 species of ants. When you see the leafcutter ants cutting leaves, it's not that they're going to eat the leaves, but actually they use those leaves to feed the fungus that they grow in those chambers, and they actually feed on the fungus.
And apparently for a 70-kilogram human adult, about the gut microbiota would weigh about 200 grams, which is equivalent to your mid-sized mango.
Surprisingly, we saw that meiotic progression pattern doesn't follow the initiation. So that supports the idea that actually suggests that some germ cells spend more time in the earlier stages of meiosis.
There are 9 processes which are considered hallmarks of aging in mammalian species specifically. These 9 hallmarks include mitochondrial dysfunction, genomic instability, epigenetic alterations, and cellular senescence, among others.
There is an ongoing search for anti-aging pills, and the question is, will longevity and health span enhancers also extend reproductive lifespan?
You know, it's not necessarily this linear path. Lots of women in their 50s go through fertile cycles, and many women in their 20s and 30s go through periods of infertility. And it's cyclical and it's complicated, and it might be maybe one of the most multivariate signatures in human health. And so we want to treat it that way.
And with that, it's not the end, it's just the beginning. Thank you, wonderful panelists, and thank you for all the attendees and all the GCR attendees. It's been a most wonderful session. This is episode 10. Until then, let's make reproductive longevity a reality. Thank you, everyone, for attending and supporting us all this while. Thank you very much.